The second season of the Ranma 1/2 remake released recently, and unsurprisingly, I had a lot of fun with it. It's a collection of some of the most iconic stories from early Ranma, and every episode was a blast. However, the second season also introduced one of the series' most dreaded characters, Happosai, a perverted old gremlin of a martial arts master who does nothing but cause trouble. A lot of fans were pretty worried about this character being reintroduced into the remake due to him being one of, if not the most perverted characters in anime. Characters like these often range in how tolerable they are, but even the most mild of these can still be off-putting to new fans, so I sort of understand. However, while I definitely find Happosai as hateable as anyone else, I do think he plays an interesting role considering the archetype he fills in Ranma. In order to get my point across, it's probably important to paint a picture of the kind of character Happosai is. He's a selfish old man who takes whatever chance he gets to creep on girls, whether it be stealing their underwear, peeking on them in the baths, or just straight up groping them. When he's not doing that, he's torturing his students, stealing and eating whatever he wants, and taking unjustified revenge on Ranma for daring to stop his usual antics. He's the closest thing the series has to a reoccurring antagonist, and his very presence is enough to make the majority of the cast despise him. What makes Happosai worse than your average pervert is his status as a martial arts master, one with encyclopedic knowledge in all sorts of special techniques, artifacts, and medicines. This makes him even more of an annoyance, as even some of the stronger Ranma characters can have a tough time stopping him. Whole arcs are dedicated to Ranma and the others having to deal with the repercussions of Happosai's prowess. He does eventually get punished for his actions, as all perverts do, but in a comedy series like Ranma, such punishments are never long-lasting. To sum it all up, he's a menace, with zero redeeming qualities. Having said that, I've always seen fairly strong parallels between Happosai and another character from another popular manga and anime franchise, Master Roshi from Dragon Ball. Master Roshi, much like Happosai, is both a master martial artist and an incorrigible pervert. He's not the only character around to have that overlap, of course. Old men often just get tagged with the pervert trait in Japanese media, but he's easily the most iconic example. There are plenty of perverted masters and mentors in anime, and nearly all of them can claim influence from this guy. Now there's a big difference in the way Master Roshi is seen in Dragon Ball and the way Happosai is seen in Ranma. Roshi's definitely done a few things that would land him in legal hot water, but he also has a number of noble traits that counterbalance his more troublesome aspects. For one, he's a genuinely good teacher and mentor to the students he takes on, and does whatever he can to make sure they grow up well. He's got a charitable heart, and he's willing to put his life on the line to fight against evil if he has to. Your mileage may vary on whether or not that actually redeems his antics, but to the cast of Dragon Ball at least, it's enough for them to still see Roshi as someone who is respected and admired for the most part. He even got to play quite a big part in Dragon Ball Super's Tournament of Power arc, which is more than we can say for some other characters in that series. Master Roshi may not have been the first perverted old man with a heart of gold out there, but he's certainly a prominent one in the world of manga and anime. Plenty of characters from other shows clearly take after his archetype, such as Jiraiya from Naruto. Jiraiya serves as Naruto's master in the ways of ninjutsu, and is, much like Roshi, an incredible lech. He's not as extreme as Roshi can be, but it is a pretty core part of his character. He even writes smut for a living. At the same time though, Jiraiya is also a really good mentor to Naruto, as well as a decent substitute father figure. He's also a loyal ally, one willing to give his life to the cause if needed. Jiraiya as a character has a lot to counterbalance his perverted tendencies and keep him feeling sympathetic, even to the point of having his own charm as a character. Master Roshi and Jiraiya are both prime examples of what I call the perverted master archetype. It's apparently not as dominant in the medium as I had initially assumed, but everyone pretty much knows what kind of character I'm talking about. They're not always masters of martial arts, sometimes they're just mentors or teachers of other kinds of skills. However, they do have one thing in common, a penchant and obsession with lewd eroticism. Speaking from a purely narrative perspective, such a flaw could make what would normally be a rather generic wizened old master a little more interesting, though I'm sure some people would argue it's a step too far. Even so, most of these characters show enough of their good sides to keep themselves from being completely hated. Happosai, meanwhile, has no such redeeming qualities. Everything he does is for his own desires, and even when doing something helpful would actually benefit him, he still refuses to do a single thing for someone else's sake, almost out of spite. He feels no remorse for anything he's ever done, and the few times he ever actually does something good is always ruined by either his greed or his general temperament. As such, he is a character hated by both the cast in-world and the readers outside. The dichotomy between how these two characters are treated has always made me wonder if Happosai was meant to be a sort of deconstruction of the kind of character Master Roshi was presented as. I like Roshi as a character as much as the next guy, but he definitely gets up to some nefarious activities from time to time. Despite that, it's not really a subject that gets touched on too much in Dragon Ball. Roshi's status as an admirable and respectable master takes more of the forefront, with his perverted aspects treated more as moments for comic relief. Now, let's be clear. Happosai's actions are far, far worse than nearly anything that Roshi has ever done. He's also a more frequent offender, while Roshi's dirty shenanigans are at least a little more spaced out. Even so, I still feel like there's something to the idea of seeing Happosai as a more unscrupulous and extreme version of Master Roshi's character. The guy debuted in Ranma while Dragon Ball's run was still going strong, and while Roshi wouldn't necessarily have been all that prominent in the story by that point, he still would have had a decent presence in people's minds. However, Happosai exhibits none of Roshi's good qualities and magnifies all of his bad ones, with him essentially being a plague on the cast whenever he's at his worst. Part of the reason for my interpretation of Happosai as a dark side deconstruction of Master Roshi is the fact that Ranma 1/2's author, Rumiko Takahashi, is a woman, and would have been more likely to take offense at the idea of a lecher like Roshi being treated as anyone respectable and venerated. Sexual harassment is an issue that's still pretty big in Japan, and I have to imagine it was even worse in the 80s. However, that might not necessarily be the case. Takahashi has apparently said in interviews that Happosai was one of her favorite characters to write for in Ranma, and has had other incredibly perverted characters in both past and future manga, including Ataru Moroboshi in Urusei Yatsura, who came out 6 years before Dragon Ball would even debut. Still, I don't think that necessarily means that my interpretation can't be a possibility. Characters like Ataru and Happosai may feature prominently in both of their respective manga, but only to make trouble for the rest of the cast until they eventually receive their comeuppance. Ataru, being the main character, still gets some redeeming moments here and there. Happosai gets no such mercies, and if he's involved in the story, it's either to get beaten up or act as a villain. In that way, Happosai acts as a deconstruction of the way these perverted traits are portrayed in other manga. Instead of being laughed off as comic relief or made up for by the occasional noble act, Happosai is treated as a pest and a villain, and is hated by the majority of the cast. It makes him a pretty interesting representative of the perverted master archetype, and one that's definitely worth having around, even if his very presence is unpleasant. Of course, that doesn't mean that everything I'm saying is absolutely correct, or that it really justifies his terrible acts. It's just an interesting way of interpreting Happosai as a character, and I don't think I'm the only one that's done it either. On its face, Happosai as a character can seem incredibly off-putting, but even he has his roles to play, even if they're quite heinous ones. Thanks for watching. I want to take this moment to thank everyone who took the time to watch my videos last year. It was my first full year uploading videos to YouTube, and while I haven't become even halfway successful, I still appreciate all the growth and support. I'm still working hard to upload videos this year too, so subscribe if you want to catch what I've got coming up, and I'll see you next time.